Well, hello everyone. This is Joy Everett, and welcome back to another Draw and Discuss YouTube Q&A. People really liked the last one I did, and so I thought I would do another one. And there were many questions that I'm going to get to today. And first off, I want to apologize for the audio quality. I don't have a very good microphone yet, as I am new to YouTube. But we'll work with it. I should have a better microphone soon, and we'll be able to get around those technical difficulties very soon. Okay, so the first question is from. Let me open it. It's from somebody going by Nanner. Quick, what are your top 10 favorite fictional characters? Okay. So it just so you know, it's changed throughout my life. When I was 13, I was like most 13-year-olds, and I had an obsession with Divergent. And so what I'm saying is, my point is, in several years, my obsessions will probably change. Let's hope that I'll be able to finish the Allura trilogy before my obsessions change, so that people aren't waiting on me for something that's never going to come. Okay. So, anyway, top favorite fictional characters. I'm just going to go off the top of my head. Shadow Weaver, Catra, Hordak, Vader. So that's 4. Kaiman / Grievous. That's 5. Okay. Sorry, this is a harder list. Cinder from the Lunar Chronicles. Scarlet, also from the Lunar Chronicles, so that's 7. Vin, Sazed, and, what's his name? Elend. I forgot his name. From Mistborn. Okay, that's 10. My 10 favorite fictional characters right now. Okay, where do I see myself in 5 years? Okay, that is a tricky one. So I definitely will probably be in college in 5 years. I don't know what I'm going to study yet, but I will probably be in college in 5 years, or, like, just graduating college if I'm, like, super lucky. Let's see, other things. I will probably be living with one of my friends. You guys probably know who I'm talking about, but just in case, I would love to room and board with my friend, Jenny. She goes by Dream is Reality on Wattpad, or Jenny Raylan on YouTube. Her content's awesome. Please check her out. I'm totally going to plug her content. Okay. So, what's the next question? What has inspired or influenced your artistic style? I don't really know. I think, so I've been drawing with this same little cartoony style. Obviously my style's evolved and changed over the years, but I've been drawing with this same kind of liney, sketchy sort of cartoon style for years, and I only recently started drawing. But I'm not sure who has really inspired me much. I do know the art style from Shira kind of influenced the way I draw eyes now and noses. But I'm not completely sure, like, if there's a specific artist I can point to and say that person really inspired me, just because drawing's always been kind of an instinctual thing for me, which is probably why I don't do very well in art classes. That's not to say that that's a good thing. I would probably be way better of an artist now if I would take art classes and learn from people who are better at this than me, but because it's, like, I've gone so long without taking any art classes, I just, like, they're not my style now. It's weird. But that's just how it goes. What is the cringiest thing you've ever drawn, and do you still have it? Okay. So confection time, I actually had to look over these questions because there's one big question that I think I'm going to answer toward the end. It was the same question asked by 2 people. Well, kind of the same question. I looked over these questions before, and I actually got what I think is possibly the cringiest thing that I've ever drawn that I have on my phone. from the time I started digital art. So just to be clear, there are many worse pictures that I have drawn, but I don't really count those as cringy necessarily because I know that I was just a new artist and I was just starting out. This picture, though, I had no excuse for how badly it turned out. I actually got it to my iPad and got it to Procreate, and I'm going to show it to you right now. It's this picture. Now, I know at the time I was so very proud of this, and this was back when I was like, this is back in my previous obsession with Grievous and Ronderu, and I still really like those characters. So there are aspects of it that I like. I like the border, even though it's kind of weird because I was using Sony Sketch, not Procreate at the time, which has weird pens. And I like the green glass reflection. I think I did fairly well with that. I could have done the glass a little better. But Ronderu's face, like seriously, I didn't know how to draw chins. She has a much leaner chin. Her eyes needed to be much bigger. And what is with her hair? I don't understand. And so, I don't know. It's not the worst thing I've ever drawn, but I had no excuse for the mistakes in this drawing. The other ones I could at least point to and say, yeah, I think that this was just, like, me being inexperienced. Oops, this is the wrong picture. That was another cartoon sketch. Okay. Specifics. How many layers do you end up using in your work, and how do you organize it? Like, what purpose does each layer serve, if at all? So it kind of depends on the style that I'm using, and, whether that picture is part of an animatic or a larger collection. So see, for example, I merge all my final layers together when I'm drawing pictures for Allura, because all of the illustrations are going to be on this one canvas thing, whatever it's called, this one work, I guess. I change it for each part of the book because, like, I just can't do, like, hundreds of layers with this size of canvas. So I change it for each part of the book, each movement of the book, if you will. But I merge the layers for this, and so generally what I do is I almost always outline my works unless I'm doing an animatic. Sometimes I'll freehand an animatic, but my animatics, that's why they don't look as good as my longer form works. Sometimes I'll freehand animatics, but usually I outline on a separate layer, and then I do the line work on another layer, and then I'll color as a separate layer, and depending on the coloring style, I'll do something else. I'll sometimes add another layer or merge it or whatever. It really depends, and I get finicky with the moods I'm in for when I color. But yeah, that's kind of how I am with layers. Next question. Banana Man, I think this is the same person. Hi, Nana. She asks, what is the most difficult piece of art you've made? Okay, so I can't answer for my entire drawing career because I've been drawing since I was 8 years old, but the most difficult one recently for me was this one, actually, because I'm not experienced with foreshortening, and at first the bust was far too big. And I still don't like how the hand turned out. I just probably need experience on it, but that's the most difficult thing I've done recently. This one was also fairly difficult because I had to adjust the features on Light Spinner's face a ton, and at first it just didn't look good. Those two are the most difficult ones I remember doing recently. I can't speak for everything I've ever done, though. Oops, I close the thing. What are the disadvantages to digital art, if any, or things you wish existed in digital art? I would say the disadvantage to digital art is that lots of times, let me think of how to say this. Digital art requires a different, like, class to take. Like, you have to learn different things for digital art than for, like, paper art. So in art class, I learned a lot about for example, in painting, about color mixing and how to mix paints to get the right colors and things like that. You don't have to do that in digital art, but I do wish, since I'm now doing digital art, that somebody had told me what layers were, how to use them, it's more just a different skill set that you have to learn if you've been doing like traditional art, I guess it's called, for most of your life. And that can take a little while for somebody to get used to. It took me ages to even realize that layers were a thing, and that I didn't have to erase the entire outline of the piece by hand every single time. That was a huge blessing. Things I wish existed in digital art. I wouldn't say there are like things I wish existed. I guess for Procreate specifically, I wish that they had a symmetry tool. My old sketching app, Sonny Sketch, even that had a symmetry tool, and that thing is like, let me think of how to say this. If Procreate is like the Cheesecake Factory. So I'm sugar free, so I can't really eat at the Cheesecake Factory. But if Procreate was the Cheesecake Factory, Sonny Sketch is the Twinkie, and they both have Sonny Sketch has a symmetry tool while Procreate does not, and that is a big problem to me. I think besides that, there's nothing that Procreate doesn't have that I could want. It's a hugely useful app, and even my last picture that I drew on Sonny Sketch is like massively, like, I'm not gonna say it's bad because it's not that bad, but it's less good compared to what I can do on Procreate, just because I'm not limited by that technology anymore. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. Jesterhead Jon Snow asks, what would you like to study in college? Okay, so I kind of answered this before. I don't really know yet, so I have a few choices that I have it narrowed down to. English with a creative writing emphasis, possibly animation, linguistics, or apologetics. I can't decide what I want to do because I'm not sure what I want to do for a career. So I think that, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's just how it is. And I'm going to get to the other questions. Sorry, I have some more, but I'm going to answer those ones last because it was two questions. It was two people asking me the same question, and the question requires a super long answer. Crystallized Faith says, any art tips would be great. Like, I guess I will watch your video and see how you draw in order to learn. I'm planning on drawing with a digital pen at some point, but mine has not come at all, and we ordered it like 2 months ago. Okay, so art tips. So first off, I haven't taken an art class since I was in middle school. And for reference, I'm almost graduated. I'm class of 2021, but I'm going to be graduated this November, December. I'm a little, I'm graduating early, but my schedule's a little off still. I don't know. But anyway. Okay, so art tips. First is please outline your works. It will make your people. If you're drawing people, animals, buildings, whatever, it will make it so much better. You will thank me so much. Okay. Second thing is just practice. Some of these are just basic tips that I have that apply even to writing too, honestly. Like, I would always tell writers, if as long as it doesn't make you massively bored, like, outline your books. It helps a lot. Other tips. Look up references. I don't know how much I use references, but I remember when I was learning how to draw people, especially, they really helped me out. And I'm sorry, I can't really offer anything because I'm not, academically trained in art. I didn't take art classes. I've taken writing classes and read books on writing. I haven't done much of the same thing with art. A lot of it is honestly just instinct. I would say experiment with your styles. This is such, cliche and stupid advice, but, experiment with different types of styles and things like that until you find one that actually works for you. Here's the thing, is I only took art classes for realism and not for cartoon, and I'm a cartoon artist. And so the thing with me and cartoon is that I assumed that I was a terrible artist just because I couldn't do realism, and realism is one of the hardest things ever to do in art. But I assumed I couldn't be a good artist because I couldn't do realism. Well, then I started watching animated TV shows, And I found that I really liked the art style, and I was like, hold on, these are good artists, but they're not doing realism. What's going on here? And so I think that you don't have to be a realist to be a good artist, but I would say develop your style and make sure that any flaws, any inconsistencies are intentional. So, for example, Steven Universe's cartoon style. Some people really don't like it. I personally, it had to grow on me, but now I really like it. But the thing with Steven Universe's cartoon style is that, it's not realistic. The characters, from what I remember, it's been a little while since I watched the show. I'm gonna rewatch it soon though. The characters don't have wrists, and so that's obviously inconsistent. And their hands are stubby and cute and stuff like that. That's obviously not realistic, but we wouldn't call that an objective flaw in their work. Why is that? It's because it fits with their style. It was intentional. It's just part of drawing in that specific cartoon style. So you don't have to be completely consistent anatomically in order to be a good artist. I would say, though, that depending on how close to realism you want a cartoon style to work, you should probably study like a reference of the human face just to get a general idea. You can like stretch the limits and have some wiggle room when it comes to cartoon style, but it shouldn't look awkward. And that's just, your old work is always going to look awkward. That's just part of being an artist or a writer. But you want to develop it so it doesn't look as awkward. Like it's as non-awkward as it can be. Let's put it that way. Crystallized Faith also asks, what are your favorite ships from any show? Okay, I have a few. So this is not from a show, it's just from books. But I like Grievous and Ronderu from Star Wars Legends still. I know that I haven't been talking about them lately, but that's because I'm like hyper fixated on Shadow Weaver. And that's mostly because at first, and we'll get to this later, she was like a super good character and relatable, and they wrote her intentionally to be like complex and stuff. And I didn't get that. I never got that vibe with Grievous. In Legends, there were Legends writers who really cared about him and Ronderu, and they made him complex. But then, when Dave Filoni started the Clone Wars, he changed the backstory, threw it out without even really reading it. If you watch the interviews, it doesn't seem like he read Unknown Soldier. It seems like he just read The Eyes of Revolution, which is like a very condensed version of it. He seemed to have just thrown it out. And so the thing is, when I discovered, this is getting off topic, but when I discovered Shadow Weaver in season 1, I remember I was just like, this person's definitely complex right off the bat, even though I hated her guts until season 2. And so that's why I'm obsessed with Shadow Weaver right now. But back to the point. I really like Grievous and Ronderu and Adala also from Star Wars, Anakin and Padme. They're really great. I like Entraptak from She-Ra. And I think that I'll go with more platonic ships too, because I really like platonic ships. Obviously Shadow Weaver and Micah, Light Spinner and Micah, their relationship was so good. It was set up so well, and I was so sad that they never saw it through. I really always thought that they were very cute together as a romantic. Watch the fandom take that out of context. As a platonic thing, I do not ship them. I've never shipped them, especially when he's a kid. No. Okay. So, I like Light Spinner and Micah. I like Glimmer and Bow, but for Glimmer and Bow in She-Ra, I could probably see them as either platonic or romantic, honestly. I don't have a problem with them getting together. I just don't like how it was really done in season 5. Yeah, but I like them either way. I really like, so in Steven Universe, and this is going to breed some controversy, I bet, but I don't know how many Steven Universe fans watch me. I obviously really love Stevonnie, because I just think they're really cute together, Steven and Connie. I love Stevonnie, but I think that Steven, now this is just as an alternate universe concept, okay? I feel like sometimes people don't understand the difference between I ship this really hard and I could see this in a different world where another ship wasn't in the way. Gosh, I'm gonna get so knocked for this. Steven and Lapis. So, I know that people are going to be really mad about that, but I would only ship them once he was an adult, and I don't even really ship them that strongly because Steven is with Connie, obviously, and they trump everything because they're adorable. But I could see it. So what I'm saying is, don't get mad at me. I still ship Stevani. It's just I could also see this other thing too. I also, let me think of other things. Okay, yeah, I think that covers it. Oh yeah, one more thing I remembered. And Ahsoka from Star Wars. Anakin and Ahsoka, best platonic ship. I love them. Okay. I'd love to know more about your Lyme disease experience. You can tell us anything and everything. I'm just very curious overall, maybe diet and such. Okay. So, I'm going to get into some things that might be triggering or disturbing, mainly because I do have mental issues as a result of Lyme disease, and some other things as well, but mainly because of Lyme disease. Okay, so the main thing that you have to know about Lyme disease is that it has many symptoms, and no two people are going to experience it the exact same way. So what I'm saying is, one person is going to tell you, yeah, nobody who has Lyme disease has mental illness, because I don't have mental illness and I have Lyme disease. I had a friend in middle school who was like that, and I'm not trying to bash people who say this, because like with most illnesses, there's a definite group of symptoms, and it's easy to identify and spot and stuff like that. That's not the case with Lyme disease. It's different for everyone. So, the other thing you have to know about Lyme disease is that Lyme disease patients don't often look sick. Now, some do. Some, I hate to say it, they don't look, I'm not going to say they look ugly, that sounds terrible. But you can definitely tell that there's something going on. But with the majority of Lyme disease patients, it's not always that simple. It's not always that easy to really see that they're sick, and so many people assume that Lyme disease is just like, it's just something that people have. It's kind of like heart murmurs, where it may not cause that big of a problem, and there's some truth to that. But just because somebody doesn't act sick and look sick doesn't mean they aren't. I remember I've actually had people in my life, most of whom I don't really talk to anymore because it was mostly in my childhood, who told me straight up to just get over it, to get over like the fact that I get winded easily, and I can't really like participate in sports or anything because I'm sick all the time. They told me to get over it, and it was mostly because they just didn't realize that I was sick. And you know, I get it on some level, because if you don't look sick, then people assume that you aren't. But that's not always the case, particularly if you have mental illness as well. I've struggled with depression for a long time. I don't know if it's for as long as I can remember, but I can definitely recall, at least since I was like 12 or so, and maybe even younger than that. I always struggled with loneliness because I could never fit in with my peers. Anyway, so diet. You asked specifically about diet. It varies from person to person. Me personally, I can't eat cane sugar. I can't eat gluten. I can't have chewing gum, because all these things cause me mainly mental problems. And by mental problems, I mean, they cause my moods to swing very rapidly. And especially sugar. I can't have more than 2 grams of sugar, or else I have I have trouble reacting to stressful situations in a godly manner. And my temper will get out of control. I'll have trouble responding well in high stress situations, things such as that. And on the one hand, it's a curse because it means that I can't have those things. But on the other hand, it's kind of good because it means so long as I avoid those things, for the most part, I'm pretty amiable, pretty easy to get along with. And yeah, and I also take numerous supplements to help with those mood issues as well. Um, I take, so obviously, disclaimer, do not self-medicate. Do not self-medicate. If you think that you might need one of these, like if you think you might need a supplement, talk to your mom, talk to your dad, talk to whoever's in charge of all that. Don't do it yourself. If you don't actually need that supplement, then it can really mess you up. Okay, now that I've said that. For my mood swings, I often take, so I take, I think I take 8 NAC a day. And NAC is an amino acid. It's amino acids, for those of you who are a little rusty on your organic chemistry or whatever it is. Amino acids are like the building blocks of proteins. So if you're deficient in a protein, it's going to cause a lot of problems for you. And I also take a small pill of lithium. Lithium is a very powerful substance. It's a very powerful metal that will that can really mess you up if you don't take it when you need it. As in, if you take it and there's nothing wrong with you. For me, it helps me regulate sleep and my mood. If I don't take lithium, nothing really changes except that I have a harder time getting to sleep at night. But taking lithium, it does help my mood. It does help, but I don't need it in order to be okay. That makes sense. And there's just a few things that I can't do because of Lyme disease. Like I said before, I can't do sports. I used to be a very good runner in my PE class, in my physical ed class. I wasn't able to do that past 6th grade due to my issues with stamina. And I got to a point, I don't want to get into my whole health history, but I might do a video about that sometime in the future, like another Draw and Discuss. If you guys are interested in hearing about my health history, let me know, and we'll see. We'll see if anybody's interested. But anyway, so I got to a point in middle school where I started to struggle really heavily with depression, and I sometimes considered suicide. Eventually my parents, this has been an ongoing problem for me in the future. Thankfully I'm getting therapy for this soon, hopefully. And so my parents, they eventually put me on this very powerful antibiotic that was supposed to kill the Lyme disease. I was on this thing for 13 months. And I completed it recently. I don't actually remember the month in which I completed it. I know I should because it was a very momentous occasion, but I just don't remember when it happened right now. But when I completed the treatment, I felt better than I had in a long time. And my mental health, it's not perfect now by any means, but it's far better than it was prior to the antibiotic. So now I am able to do much more. I am more active now because I took that antibiotic and I did that treatment. And yeah, I think that's the main thing about being a Lyme disease patient. Honestly, it is a chronic illness, but it's not one that for me personally affected me so much that I couldn't lead a normal life. I'm still a high school student, just like you. I'm still somebody who, who does, various fun activities, just like you. There's a lot of things, there's more similarities than differences when it comes to Lyme disease, in my experience. Now, for other people, that's not always the case. I'm very fortunate and blessed by God that my illness was not so severe. But I'm still me. I'm still Joy. And so I think that that's the most important thing to understand about all this, is that I'm still me. Okay. So I think that's all the other questions. Just 1 second. Okay. So I got 2 questions. I'm going to answer them both at once. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Okay, so I actually am going to get out a resource to use while I answer this question. Crystallized Faith asks, do you think Noelle did fan service and decided to kill Shadow Weaver only because everyone hates our poor girl? Also, Nana Banana asks, forgot to add this to the last question, ramble about Shadow Weaver, please. Okay. So, some of you might remember that I published a chapter on my randoms blog a week or 2 after season 5 came out, and I was basically saying that the problem with Shadow Weaver's arc was that Noelle, there was creator-audience miscommunication, basically. That they intended for her to be a complex, outright evil villain. They never intended for people to sympathize with her, and we just misread it because they didn't portray that very well. Well, now I disagree with myself on that. I think that Shadow Weaver was always meant to be a sympathetic villain in the show. I think that to the end she remains a sympathetic villain, even though that they tried to stumble back from that and like backtrack on that, so to speak. I think that's what happened, and here's why. Okay. So let's start out with this. The first problem with her arc was the pause in season 4. Okay, so let's talk about season 4, because that's important to understanding what happened with season 5, in my opinion. Season 5 was a result of season 4, in my opinion, partially. Now, if you remember, season 4 paused her arc completely. There was no point of view time. There's no really exploration of her relationship with Glimmer on how Shadow Weaver felt about it. It was mainly focused on how Glimmer feels about Shadow Weaver, which that's valid. But I think that we needed to see that as well. So her arc was put on complete pause in season 4. Okay. That was a bad mistake, and here's why. Shadow Weaver is a sympathetic villain. She was meant to be a sympathetic villain from I believe, arc 2, which is seasons 2 to 3 onward. Okay. I think that however, Shadow Weaver is harder to sympathize than your average villain by design. She was not sympathetic in season 1, just like Hordak wasn't sympathetic in season 1. We didn't know much about any of them besides the fact that they were both very powerful and very evil to Catra. That's important. However, they both get developed some in seasons 2 and 3. We learn specifically about Shadow Weaver that she was a very powerful sorceress named Lightspinner or Mysticore. You guys know this if you follow my channel. And she trained Micah. She loved him very much, but something went wrong, and now she's evil. So that's the very condensed version of her backstory. That needed to be carried onward in order for her arc to work. You can't just stop at this person was once a good person and still have her arc work, because Shadow Weaver is not the sort of villain that you sympathize with easily. She's less sympathetic than Catra and Hordak in seasons 2 and 3, just by design. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing on its own, because what's interesting about her arc is that you first get her set up as this very powerful and mysterious and terrible person, but then in arc 2 you find out she's hurting just as much as Catra and Hordak. So what are we going to do with this? Season 4 did not do anything with this information. Nothing. The only thing that it did at the end was show her shocked and surprised when Micah returned. However, I was actually ready because I personally did sympathize with Shadow Weaver per arc 2 of the show. I was ready to be completely okay with what season 4 did. If season 5 could pick up where seasons 2 and 3 left off. But season 5 did not do this. Season 5 did not do this. Instead, the only connection that the Light Spinner episode had in season 5 was that Shadow Weaver was willing to save Micah from being chipped by Horde Prime. And this was because, we know that in the Light Spinner episode, she did care about him. I'm not going to get into whether she manipulated him or not. That's a whole different debate for another time. But we do know at the very least she cared about him enough to save him from Horde Prime's clutches. So that's the only connection the Light Spinner episode has. Okay. So the show didn't come back to any of this in season 5. None at all. Okay. And the other problem with how season 5 handled her was how it treated her as a person. So even in season 1, I would argue even in season 1, and definitely in seasons 2 and 3, I don't know how you can argue otherwise, she's portrayed as a person. And by this I mean, in spite of how terrible she is and how much she abused her children, she's still considered a person. Adora does not heal her because she's useful for information. She heals her because she loves Shadow Weaver and she wants to know why she's there. And she can't find that unless she heals her. And that's very important because it sets up the idea that, hey, if even Shadow Weaver can be healed, what does this say about her ability to change and be a better person sometime in the future? And so that is super important to how She-Ra deals with its abuse themes. Even the abuser, the wicked, terrible Shadow Weaver, is complex. And she's hurting. And she has a loved one whom she thinks is dead right now. That's so important to her character. And season 5 tosses it in the trash. We lose the nuance that seasons 1 to 3, I would say, set up with Shadow Weaver and her kids, because in season 5 it's portrayed as she just blanket doesn't like either one of them. We lose that nuance. We lose the fact that Shadow Weaver is capable of recognizing when her plans go awry. She definitely regrets the spell of obtainment pre-season 2. I don't know why people argue otherwise. And the show never comes back to any of this. It's very confusing in season 5 whether she wants to help the gang get the heart of Etheria so she can save Micah, or whether she just wants power for herself. Because she says, right, she tells Castaspella in the woods that she wants to save Micah. But then we see her withhold information from the gang regarding the fact that Adora could die in getting the heart and things like that. We see that we see that everybody's accusing her of being power hungry. She never refutes any of this. And so it's just I'm not saying that that in that instance she is power hungry, but I'm saying we don't understand. It's very confusing at the very least. And I think that this was because the creators were afraid. They were afraid to see her arc through because she's evil and she's Shadow Weaver and she's hard to forgive. That's a bad reason not to see someone's arc through, is because they're just hard to forgive. That's the whole point of her character, so they shouldn't have tossed it out like that. And then, of course, the final thing that I have to say about this is that, one more thing about how they treat her as a person before I move on to how they handled her ending. I hate Adora's speech at the end. Okay, not the words in the speech, because the words in the speech make perfect sense for somebody who's been abused her whole life, and her abuser is just not taking the chance to change and stuff like that. Adora's speech is fine. The words in the speech are fine. The problem is the show treats that as the objective truth. It's toxic, false, and evil to say that Shadow Weaver only ruins people. That is just blanket not true. At all. it's true that she ruined Catra and Adora, sure, but they are not the only people in her life. This show completely forgot about Micah and all this. And so, to me, that speech and the way that the show basically says that Catra and Adora do not have to let go of their anger toward her, that it's totally fine for them to continue feeling this way and holding on to those angry emotions even after she died for them, that's really toxic to me. And I don't think that it's a good message to send, especially in a show where Catra is able to get all romantic and snuggly with Adora as if nothing happened. And that to me is a big problem when you're discussing themes of abuse in your narrative. And yeah, so that's all I had to say about how they treat her as a person. And of course her death is a mess. There's no reason she couldn't have lived. The only reason they killed her off was because she's Shadow Weaver. Shira's magic system is a mess, and they could have made some excuse for her to live, but instead they made an excuse for her to die because she doesn't deserve to live. And I just see these people in the comments section on YouTube applauding her for having died because they're like, she recognized that she didn't deserve to live. And I actually agree with them on that, because she tells Catra things like, it's too late for me, and that it's only the beginning for her, things like that. And I just find that to be a big problem. I think that it's a problem to treat one character as worse or irredeemable while you let another character off scot-free just because she's younger, she got more screen time, she's getting romantic with the main character, things like that. That's a big issue to me, how they treat that. And I think that the themes it just communicates are so nasty. I think that the show treats Catra Catra gets off too easily, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying this because I hate Catra. Catra is among one of my favorite fictional characters ever. She's so sympathetic and sad, and I love her so much. But I think that you have to treat both your villains fairly if you want to communicate your themes well. Shira did not do that because the writers were afraid to finish Shadow Weaver's arc, and that's a real shame. But now I'm going to do some shameless self-promo. If you want to see an AU in which she survived, please read Allura. Now, Allura is not this AU, or it's not an AU, it's actually canon compliant. Fun fact, canon compliant just means that you don't directly contradict canon. I'm planning to bring her back from the dead, so it's technically not contradicting canon. Allura is not the AU. However, it is the first book in a trilogy about Shadow Weaver and Micah, and in the final book, takes place after season 5, and it brings her back, and we get to I'm going to finish her arc, and it's going to be great. So, if you're interested in seeing that, please follow me and read the book. That's shameless self-promo for you. And I think that was all the questions for today. As always, please feel free to leave questions in the comments section for my next Q&A, because I can't do these unless I have questions to answer. So, yeah, feel free to do that. I love you all, and I'll see you all